Okay, thanks for your patience. We are recording this and we'll replay it and post it on our coaches page and refs page starting tomorrow. I've just got a quick presentation and want to leave plenty of time for anyone that has any comments, questions, feedback. First off, I'm Drew McElligott. I'm actually the outgoing regional commissioner, and Derek Jansen will be our next regional commissioner. We'll kind of formally announce that to everyone later this season. But there's a comment in the last couple of weeks from one of our coaches, and it was about, I'm trying to remember what it was about now. I believe it was about the kick-in versus throw-in for U5 through U8. And it really doesn't matter what it was about. One of the comments that the coach made was something to the effect of, we probably don't, my opinion probably doesn't matter, or my opinion doesn't matter. And obviously we throw these phrases around and whether we mean them or not. I just want to make the point, we always want feedback. We always want people's opinion about things, especially our coaches, refs, our volunteers. And frankly, we don't get enough feedback, in my opinion. We want to know what people think about different policy, different guidelines, etc. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree, obviously. But I just want to make that comment in general, and feel free to share anything at the end of after this presentation. All right. So if for some reason you can't see the screen that I'm sharing, please speak up now, and otherwise I'll get started. So thank you all for taking the time. As I said, this is being recorded. In general, we are always going to be able to run a solid program if we're all adopting, exhibiting, valuing the 6 philosophies. And they're right here on the screen. And of course, we've all got a role in terms of making sure that our kids have the best soccer experience possible, whether that be board members, parents on the sideline, coaches, or referees. We just need to keep focus on the kids, obviously, and the 6 philosophies listed at the bottom of the screen. So I want to touch on a few points. I'm being a little sarcastic in terms of what did we learn or relearn, and you'll see why in a second. But each season we have incidents that might pop up that usually involve adults and adult behavior and conduct. And it is important to touch on a few of these things as reminders. And we actually have created a new email address, incidents@aoiso300.org, and that is a serious email. We seriously want to know if you see or hear something that we need to be aware of in terms of AYSO 300 leadership, and that would be incidents, INCIDINTS, incidents@aoiso300.org. So what we learned in fall of 2022, physical contact with kids should be avoided. Before you worry too much about what I mean by that, we had a few incidents last fall in which either a coach or a referee, it happened with both types of volunteers, were touching a player on the field or at the field in a way that was not, I would just say, nothing that should be reported, but a parent saw it and didn't like what they saw, and because it was their kid being touched. And so when we talk about positive coaching, we are talking about giving high fives, giving fist bumps, shoulder bumps, whatever. There's all sorts of ways that as coaches, we do at times encourage and congratulate our kids with those types of gestures. A handshake. All these things are fine. If you as a coach or referee are grabbing a player's jersey, I'm just here to tell you that's not necessary. And so we had a couple instances where a referee on the field grabbed a player because with their good intentions, they wanted to show the player something about the play. And in the case of a coach, grabbing a player's jersey, tugging them towards them to put them into the game. In each of these occasions, they were seen by the parent of the child, and the parent didn't like it. So we should avoid those types of incidents, those types of actions. They are not necessary, and they're only going to draw, as witnessed by this past season, attention by the parents where they don't like what they're seeing. As a referee, we make a call, and we don't need to spend a lot of time demonstrating what's permitted and not permitted. That's not the time and the place. We want to let the kids play the game. And if it's something at halftime to talk to the team or at the end of the game, talk to the team, that's potentially okay in the right way, done in the right way, but we need to let the kids play the game. All these things, if you have any questions and we need to talk more about them at the end of the presentation, I'll be happy to talk about that. We learned that not every U5 through U8 coach likes what our policy is when the ball goes out of bounds, goes past the touchline. Our game guidelines for really since COVID have been kick-ins, which is a pass, instead of throw-ins, which is also, by the way, a pass. But our policy is U5 through U8 divisions. When the ball goes out of bounds, the player does a kick-in. Apparently, we learned at the end of the fall season that not every coach was doing kick-ins, and whether that was knowingly or not, inconsistent with our kick-in rule or policy, that is the rule. That is the rule for last fall, will be the rule for this spring. We will, like always, revisit all of our game guidelines, including this one, and discuss it. And we've had feedback from some parents about, or some coaches about this. But in the meantime, we need to follow what the game guidelines are. And if for any other reason, it's because we've got 20 teams plus in each of these divisions, and it's simply going to create more and more confusion if teams are not consistent and players are not consistent in how they're bringing the ball back into play. So we learned in the fall that canceling practices leads to parents canceling registration. We unfortunately learned after the fact at the end of the fall season that one coach in particular was canceling roughly half of their practices last season. We wish we'd known about this sooner, obviously, and we simply can't have eyes on every field. But I can guarantee you, had we known, let's say mid-season or whenever we learn about the cancellations, and obviously, and just to clarify, this is a U7 and older coach, so they have weekly practices during the week. We ask our coaches to run a weekly practice, one weekly practice. If they wanted to practice twice a week, they're all for it, if they wanted to do that. But one weekly practice, that's all, for an hour. We give you a ball bag, we give you a field, we allow you to schedule your field. All that we ask, not all that we ask, but we ask you to keep that schedule, to run that practice, not to cancel. If it's weather issues, we understand that those cancellations will happen, but that was not this. And so by no surprise, when we started to look at after the fall, the withdrawals and cancellations, this team had I think as many as 4 players that are not returning. And I don't think it's a surprise when you put all the pieces together. So please run your practices. Don't cancel. I know that life happens. I have been coaching for many years as a parent volunteer. We try to lean on our assistant coaches. If you're an assistant coach on this call, please, try your best to stay involved, to fill in where you need to. And we simply need to ask for more help from parents on the team if we need it. That's the alternative to canceling practice. All right. So if there's any questions about our game guidelines, ayso300.org/guidelines. That includes everything from size of the soccer ball for each division to how many kids are on the field at the same time during the match. As I said, kick-ins, which is a pass, instead of throw-ins for U5 through U8 division. That's nothing new. This has been our rule for U5 through U8 for years now. And again, it'll be discussed, it's been discussed before in terms of whether we want to continue that policy or not. Our U9, U10 girls, we're the game players on the field, 7v7, and U9, U10 boys, we're recommending 8v8. Now, the reason for this is, simply put, as a practical thing based on roster size, which is based on, in part, the number of registrations that we had in the fall and have continued to add on to this spring. So rather than turn new registrations away at the U9, U10 boys level and say we don't have room for you, we've expanded rosters, but in doing so are expanding the play on the field to 8v8. And 77 8v8, that includes the goalkeeper. And if you have any questions about this, we can talk about it at the end of the presentation. Whether we will continue to update the website at ayso300.org. If there are closures or cancellations, if there are no closures or cancellations, we will likely not update the website. We have games to get to in the morning or practices to get to during the week as well. So if there are any closures and cancellations, we will update it on Saturdays by 7:30 a.m. On Sunday, June 4th, we have scheduled matches, and we'll update it that morning as well. There are no games scheduled other than U19, no games scheduled in any division on Saturday, June 3rd. Any field relocations will be emailed to team parents if that applies. And then during the week, we update the website if there are closures and cancellations by 3 p.m. If there's nothing closed by 3 p.m., again, we're out, the collective we are out doing other things, running practices, striping fields, work. And so that is a coach call beyond 3 o'clock. If a storm comes through like today, like later today, that's a coach's call whether to cancel or not. And of course, we have a zero tolerance policy for lightning or thunder. That play should be suspended immediately. Uniforms for parents of new players. We are having them pick up uniforms. We've had a few different dates where they've come to do that at Spring Rock Park. The final scheduled date is tomorrow, Thursday, from 5 to 7 p.m. at Spring Rock Park Shed. That's for parents to come and pick up their new player's uniform. If we have to schedule something on Friday, we'll do that as well. If you have questions about uniforms, reach out to Derek, uniforms@ayso300.org. Talking about fields and practices for U7 and older teams. In general, field conditions, like every season, there are some fields that are really struggling as far as turf condition. In a place like Gordon Park, the full-size field by the parking lot on the west side of the field of the park, We've decided it's not, it's basically unsafe, so certain portions of that field. We walked the field yesterday with members of Park District of LaGrange staff, and we're trying to move as many games as possible off of Gordon Park. And unfortunately, it's been a pattern with that particular field where it's remained in poor condition. Certain fields have patches like Gordon Northeast, Memorial Park. We're encouraging teams that practice in Memorial Park and LaGrange Park to please try to avoid playing on during your practices the worn areas, which are pretty obvious to see. Wayla Park, we tried to lay a field out there yesterday that avoids certain worn areas, and unfortunately it's very hard to do with different barriers and obstructions. Forest Hills North, for that same reason, as far as turf condition, that is closed to all user groups this spring. We continue, our volunteer staff, myself included, continue to do field layout and goal placement all the way up to the 11th hour. We have several fields still to do tomorrow and Friday, and they're getting striped by our United coaches in terms of the first striping. Please, whether it's Saturday or during the week in practices, please do let us know if there are any, just to confirm that we're aware of any field hazards, any of the orange goal stakes or anchors that are supposed to be in the ground, staking the goal down to the ground. If any of those appear to be missing, we need as many eyes on these fields as possible so we make sure we know what's going on. And of course, any questions or concerns, whether it be about user groups or what have you, related to fields, please let us know. The practice scheduling, the online practice scheduler is currently not up and running. We're updating it and setting recurring practices for the remaining teams, but that should hopefully be back up as a live scheduler in case you need to change anything or reschedule anything. And that'll be hopefully back up tomorrow. In terms of our referees, we would really appreciate if our parent referees would self-schedule matches. Obviously, we don't expect you to know precisely what games you're going to necessarily ref for the entirety of the season. Things will also change, but to the extent that you know what games you're able to referee, we'd really appreciate if you could self-schedule as soon as possible. We are allowing our youth referees to schedule as well. If you happen to be a parent of a youth referee and you're not sure how to get them to schedule themselves, or if you need any steps helped out in the process of the youth refs, please reach out to me. And in general, as coaches, as parent spectators, we of course don't want to scare these any referees off, let alone our youth referees. My daughter just completed certification for refereeing, and so as a freshman at LT, it's especially disappointing to see any kid or any referee excited about doing it, about refereeing, and it would be disappointing to see just as quickly as they're turned on to it, them being turned off. So please don't just look at this in terms of your own behavior, your own support of our referees, but if you hear a parent on your team as a coach berating the ref, respectfully say something to the parent. I know we want to avoid conflict sometimes, but there's a right way to do it, and our parents need to understand that we expect better behavior. And feel free to, again, email incidents@ayso300.org if there's something specific we need to know about from a leadership perspective. There is zero tolerance, whether it's a youth ref, adult ref, for any kind of referee verbal abuse. And we're trying to retain refs, not chase them out. in general, what's the best teacher of the game? The game itself. So in all cases, we want to avoid interruption, avoid disruption, avoid distraction at all of our AYSO activities, and we want to let the kids play. We want them coming back for more the following week, the following season, and hopefully be a lifelong lover of the game of soccer. That's the ideal. And that's really it. If anyone has any questions, comments, feedback, I'd love to hear it. And I'll kind of open the floor up right now. And you can either put in the chat or speak up and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I had a question on for the new U9 age. Are there penalty kicks, or is that for older kids, or I guess what's the recommendation there?
Yeah, so there are penalty kicks starting at that age. There are not penalty kicks before that age. So U8 and below, there are definitely not penalty kicks. In fact, we actually mark a penalty mark in U7, U8, but it's only to do other markings on the field. So U9, U10 would be the earliest that there would be a penalty kick. And you know, if I were a referee instructor, I'd tell you all the instances in which that should be. I don't feel like that's within my scope. But yes, there are penalty kicks starting at U9. Any other questions or comments about that?
Hi, Drew. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
This is Jim. I met you the other day when it was freezing cold on Sunday.
Hey, Jim. How are you?
So good. Two questions. You mentioned first on the kick-ins. I just wanted to clarify whether defending the kick-ins is required / expected, or discouraged / not allowed, or somewhere in between.
Defending the actual kick-in is not allowed. We want to give space for the kick-in, and I don't have the actual. I believe in the game guidelines it says the exact distance to which you know no player should interfere. And if it's not there, then we'll need to put it there, but it should be there. And so you know, defending the recipients of the pass, right? I mean, obviously that's permitted. That's part of soccer. As I like to say, shadowing a player in terms of defending and covering the player, but covering the kicker is not permitted except within that, you know, beyond that distance.
Got it. Perfect. The next question was about the thunder and lightning thing. I just wanted to make sure I understand the totality of it. So if you mentioned suspended, does that mean we kind of get off the field, stand by and wait, even though it's still kind of an open environment, or do we clear out?
Yeah, so there's a full policy at on the schedule page, ayso300.org/schedule. In effect, if there's a suspension of play because there's a sign of lightning or sign of thunder, in effect that cancels the rest of your game or practice. And the reason for that is that the resumption of play by the policy is 30 minutes after the final sign of thunder or lightning. So that's the way it's ultimately going to work out as a cancellation.
Yeah, for a 24-minute game that would go past the end of the.
Right.
Yep.
You know, it's conceivable that you could start the practice as a U5, U6 team, and then there's thunder lightning, and I suppose it's conceivable that you could start a game even if it's a shorter game. But yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Unlikely.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Anyone else? And by the way, I kept it brief. Part of why I kept things brief is we did a kickoff Zoom like this at the start of the fall. Yeah, I don't want it to just replicate. The intention was not just to replicate what we did last fall as far as this type of presentation, but if you were hoping to hear something else tonight, and you'd like to let me know what else we should be talking about, that if you feel that way, then I'd appreciate you speaking up about it, because we're all, again, we're looking for feedback. Okay, so feel free to interrupt me as I wrap things up, but I do appreciate, I should have said this from the outset if I didn't. Thank you all, including the folks that listen to this on replay. Thank you all for all that you do. We can't run a program. We're not perfect, but we can't run a program the way we do without you, and on all of our volunteers. So I really do appreciate you taking the time tonight, and appreciate you volunteering. And I know many of you have been at this. This isn't your first rodeo, so thanks truly for being a really important part of what we're doing and what we're trying to do. And I hope everyone has a good night. Stick around. I'll stick around a little bit if anyone has any final comments. But thanks again. Have a good night and have a great season. I hope you guys enjoy watching your kids play soccer. Thank you.
Thank you.